Walmart's Black and Unlimited platform is making it easier than ever to support Black-owned brands. When you go to walmart.com/Black and Unlimited, you'll not only get to shop products from Black-owned brands, but also learn about founders like Janelle Stevens of Camille Rose, which specializes in products for naturally curly hair. And there are many more awesome products that you have yet to discover. It's all easy to find with Walmart's Black and Unlimited platform. Join in on celebrating Black brands today and every day at Walmart. We are Black and Unlimited. Visit walmart.com/Black and Unlimited to discover more. That's walmart.com/Black and Unlimited.
Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Ich warte seit Wochen auf diesen Tag und tanz vor Freude über den Asphalt. Als wär's ein Rhythmus, als gäb's ein Lied, das mich immer weiter durch die Straßen zieht. Komm dir entgegen.
Hello and welcome to Gegenpressing, the Bundesliga podcast. I'm Manu, he's Stefan Biankowski. And Stefan, how's it going?
Yeah, not bad at all. I'm actually really tired, to be honest with you. My legs are like spaghetti. Springtime has finally arrived here in Scotland, and I've used this kind of long weekend, because we have the Monday off as a bank holiday in the UK, to go hill walking. That was on the Saturday. On Sunday, I did a bit of walking as well with some friends, and then today I think I went off into the forests near Aberfoyle, and I think I was walking for about 12k with my dog. So my legs are well and truly done. I'm sitting upright in this computer chair, but we were on video right now because we're obviously recording for the YouTube channel as well, and you might have to prompt me a few times if I just fall asleep on it.
Oh, it's good to get the cardio in. I told you before the podcast that now that the days are longer, we have these nice early mornings. I decided rather than doom scrolling in the morning to do something that I've always used to do, and that's weightlifting. Everyone who follows me knows I'm an avid cyclist. I do between 300 and 500 kilometers a week for cycling, right? But the legs are good. The arms have started to look like spaghetti, so I decided to go back to get some weightlifting done again. So yeah, I had a nice early start of that. It's good to get the exercise in, right? It's important.
You cannot skip arm day, whatever you do.
No, most people seem to skip leg day. I'm the opposite.
I'm a bit like that myself, actually. Whenever I used to go to the gym, I much preferred, just in general, I much prefer cardio to weightlifting and stuff. So
yeah. But
I think that's because I'm I'm not a heavy guy, but I'm blocky. I'm from like Polish stock, like working stock, I guess. I mean, my wife makes fun of me because I've got like these kind of square hands, which I call them spade hands, because they just sum up me perfectly. Like I'm like a square. I feel like I'm going to turn into the old man from Up. So every time I do exercise, it's like I need to do cardio. I need to get like trimmer. But yeah, that's been my week.
Yeah.
Weekend.
I think as long as you get your steps / exercise in, especially as both of us are approaching our mid / late 30s. Anyways, dating us terribly. And we're totally off topic because we had a pretty interesting Bundesliga match day once again. And we should probably jump into it right after this break.
This episode of the Gegenpressing Podcast is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.ag is your number one source for all your basketball info, stats, news, and scores. Get the latest odds and lines, including the latest player reports for this year's pro basketball playoffs. BetOnline is always your sports information headquarters this season, as we have you covered for all your sports wagering needs. Basketball, MLB, NHL hockey, right to UFC and boxing. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info, including live betting options and your favorite casino and card games you can play right from your home. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Be sure to use our promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, BELIEVE, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. That is BLEAV for 50% welcome bonus. Bet online, where the game starts.
Yeah, Stefan, I'm done. I will no longer make any predictions. I'm sick and tired of it. I think it's pointless. I feel like that every time I think I figured it out, I get a curveball thrown my way that just completely and utterly ruins it for me. Having said that, now my prediction of the title race being over before the final match day is probably going to become true because I said this, but we're here again. Dortmund cough up 2 points, tons of talking points in this game. And Bayern Munich then, of course, win their games against Hertha. Huge surprise, although I do not think that they look convincing at all in this match against a team that is probably now relegated. Let's start with the Bochum result, because this is a huge point for VfL Bochum in the relegation battle. And a lot of teams around Hertha have picked up big points, right? We get to talk about Schalke in a moment as well. Dortmund, and at the time when we saw the situation, the Karim Adeyemi foul, and I think sometimes it's really good to just reflect for 48 hours and let it all wash over you and, see the reactions come in. I think it's pretty safe to say that the DFB missed one here, that this was a penalty. Stegemann admitted this as much himself. I actually think that the way he explained it makes this look even worse, because one of his things that he said on, I think it was on Doppelpass, that Dortmund players should have protested even louder to ensure that he looked at this again. It's a bad picture. Dortmund fans will feel aggrieved, and I think they have a point, but you should not rely on a penalty to beat Bochum. You should never, ever rely on a penalty to beat Bochum. And I think this is where maybe the Dortmund fans have it right to complain about the referee, but at that point, it should have already been 2-3-1 for Dortmund.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, first things first, it was a penalty. I did have kind of some doubts in real time, not really to the extent that I thought it wasn't a penalty, but I think it's probably fair to say that Adeyemi does lean into the defender in this instance. The ball comes across the box and the ball's basically behind Adeyemi, if you catch my drift, and then the Bochum defender just kind of Suarez, I think it was, really, really stupid slide tackle. I don't know whether he's maybe trying to preempt what he thought was an Adeyemi shot. So maybe he's slide tackling in to try and block the shot, but Adeyemi basically falls over him. Goalkeeper doesn't call it, and it's just kind of blown into this whole thing over the weekend whereby, you had Terzic and Sebastian Kehl coming out with some truly remarkable kind of toys out the pram moments where you had Kehl basically saying, I actually have the quote here. I'll get to Terzic first, because I thought Terzic's comments were ridiculous, where he basically said, I said it last week, it's a once-in-a-lifetime chance for us, maybe a once-in-a-lifetime chance for me to get so close to the championship trophy in my life, and then there are decisions like that. Now, we can argue about the decisions all day long, but for Terzic to kind of contextualize it within the point that, oh my God, Dortmund are so close to getting to a title, why isn't the referee bearing that in mind, is just truly bizarre. And then I think the other interesting thing, you maybe know better than me, because I was kind of just flicking through the newspapers and the kind of comments this week, or today actually, about the kind of reaction, and seems as though Stegemann's basically said that he didn't hear anything from the Cologne bunker, in terms of the VAR people. He wasn't prompted by them to go back and look at it, which in most typical protocol would be that if he misses that call, they would say to him, maybe you should have a look at that. Because I think, if I'm not mistaken, VAR, he can only look at VAR if he's made a decision, and then he looks at VAR to see if he's wrong about that decision. But because he didn't make a call, he couldn't go back through to VAR. I don't even know if that's true, to be honest. But basically, he says, look, I didn't hear anything in my ear about whether that was the wrong call. Sebastian Kehl then says, if you don't use the means you have at your disposal in this situation, you don't watch it, then I think that's negligent, cowardly, and completely wrong. And, I did actually my newsletter on, whether Dortmund deserved to win the title, this performance and how they've been performing on the road in particular. I'll maybe jump into some of those stats in a moment, but it kind of, the thought that came to mind when I was kind of looking at the reaction from the Dortmund hierarchy was, there's that old saying, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. And I kind of reworded it saying hell hath no fury like a football club scorned, because it felt to me like Dortmund suddenly had this tremendous excuse to kind of bail themselves out of dropping 2 points in this game, because you can absolutely argue that Dortmund should have had a penalty. Just like I think you could probably argue that Takuma Asano should have had a penalty 10 minutes before that when Mats Hummels basically pushed him to the ground in the Dortmund box. I thought that was a pretty clear penalty, to be perfectly honest with you. But for Dortmund to argue that penalty call was the reason that they dropped 2 points in this game is just bizarre to me, because I thought, I actually watched the game in real time. I watched the game back today, Monday afternoon, and there's actually only maybe two and a half chances that Dortmund create in that second half. There's the Daniel Malin kind of back heel about 10 minutes from time. Mukuku has a really clear-cut chance when he comes on, completely fluffs his chances there. And I think Jude Bellingham has a half chance with a kind of late-run shot into the box. And that's it. There's really nothing else from Dortmund in that second half. And although they kind of did a decent job in the first half of kind of pulling it back after they go a goal down, and maybe should have scored a second in this first half, they were asked huge questions of themselves in the second half, and they just didn't live up to or didn't match that standard. So I don't know. I feel like we can spend. I mean, I know we have to kind of talk about it because obviously that's just the way it is. But I feel like Dortmund kind of moaning and complaining the referee kind of cost them this game and potentially has cost them the league title is absolute nonsense, to be honest with you, because if you kind of look at Dortmund's away form in particular, where they've been dropping points for fun, they've only picked up, I think, 6 wins from 14 games on the road this season. They've got the 4th best away record. We saw this against Stuttgart not so long ago. They continue to drop points. It's their own fault that they are now second in the league, and it's their own fault that they now probably, I mean, I'm not going to say they have thrown away the league title because it's still plenty of football left to play, but they're in this position because it's their own fault. It's not because of the referee or one bad penalty call.
Yeah, I had some people suggest to me that Manuel Riemann had the game of his life, and the Bellingham chance that you're pointing out, he makes it look good, but having been a goalkeeper myself, we love a shot like that. It's easy to stop, but looks fantastic, right? Because you get to dive, but in the end of the day, it's not a difficult save to make if you're a Bundesliga goalkeeper. Looks good on TV. He had a few moments like that. So there was people saying Riemann had game of his life. This game was an absolute fluke. I'm like, did he though? I mean, it was definitely a game that he enjoyed because he got to do the things that goalkeepers love to do, which is diving and, making saves look good. But none of these stops were extremely difficult. And what I kind of missed in this Dortmund game in the attack is that sort of urgency that they had in the last 10, 15 minutes, where they did really push. A couple of things that stood out to me here is that oftentimes they would take 1 or 2 touches rather than take 1 touch, right? When you play against a team like Bochum that is in a defensive block like that, playing literally for their lives, right? Because they're in the relegation battle and this point is enormous for them. Then you have to be more precise in the chances that you are taking. You add to the fact that this is a derby, right? This is a game that comes with all this adage that we explained in the previous show. You just have to be more precise in your finishing situations. I actually thought that Dortmund's response to going down 1-0 was excellent. The equalizer came right away, and then I thought, okay, well, they equalized within 2 minutes. It's this will pave the way for them to actually win this game, right? Because the response was, we go down 1-0. 2 minutes later, Adeyemi with a one-touch score equalizes, right? That is how you execute the attacks. And then sort of nothing happened after that. They didn't have the urgency to right away build on the equalizer. And I think the more the minutes I had the sense we have another, it was kind of we have another 45 minutes to equalize. We have another 30 minutes to equalize. We have another 20 minutes to equalize. The missed penalty happens. It's okay, we still have another 15 minutes to equalize. We have another 10 minutes to equalize. Oh crap, we're running out of time. We have to go score the go ahead. And then all of a sudden it clicked, right? But it was too little or too late. They huffed and puffed. That urgency was way too late. You have to put a team like Bochum to swat the moment you score the equalizer, and that never happened. And I think that is something that you see quite often with Dortmund. It's either they lack the urgency when they score a big goal like that. I mean, the Stuttgart one was a great example. Just make it 3-2, just wrap it up, and then they just kind of stop, right? And this is just not something you can do if you want to win the title. Look, those 2 points and the 2 points against Stuttgart, you'd be what, like 3 points ahead of Bayern Munich now? That probably would be enough to win the title. So Terzic and Kehl, that's where I'm kind of laughing. It's like it's a once in a lifetime opportunity to win the title, and the referee takes it away from us. It's like, well, at the end of the day, you've been dropping points from winning situations against Bremen, against Stuttgart. This was unnecessary. Like, at one point when Bayern gives you a massive assist like that, you got to convert. And I'm not sure it's a once in a lifetime opportunity, because we get to talk about Bayern and all the issues in a moment. But, this would be a good, the Bundesliga needs the 10-year run to end at some point. And Dortmund can complain about the referee as much as they want. We had plenty of situations this year where Bayern Munich fans were aggrieved. How long did we talk about that Upamecano red card against Gladbach, right? And they had plenty of situations where they were unhappy about the referee and the decisions that were made against them. And we were critical about Bayern then as well on this podcast for saying, well, they also weren't good enough. So, two things can be true at the same time, right? A referee could come up with a decision that didn't favor you, but you could still be not good enough at the same time to win the game. And I think in this game, both those things are true. Stegemann should have given Dortmund a penalty. That was the wrong call. The VAR team should have interfered. They did not, for whatever reason, did give Stegemann the indication to look at this again, which he should have, right? But Dortmund should have still won the game regardless. And I think in this case, both those things are true. And I think we are rightfully sitting here criticizing them for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just set the record straight. You can quite easily say Dortmund should have had a penalty. I think Bochum should have had a penalty too, to be honest, right? So you can say they should have had a penalty, but also say that's not an excuse for not winning this game. And I felt like the really interesting thing about this match was that Daniel Malin really got out the blocks really fast in this game. He was tremendous in that first half. We've seen this happen quite a few times now, where he has a really good first half and then he starts to look quite tired. I know he almost got a spectacular goal in this second half, that kind of back heel thing. But it's really interesting how Dortmund have almost kind of slotted into this kind of comfort zone of thinking, because Malin has been so outstanding recently. I think he's either scored or assisted like the last 7 or 8 games in a row now. It's almost like this front line has kind of started relying on him to kind of create or score goals, But then if you actually kind of look at their Bundesliga form in general and the players who are scoring goals in the league, it's actually quite bleak. I mean, Julian Brandt is the club's top goal scorer in the Bundesliga this season with 8 goals. And Yusufa Moukoko is second with 7 goals. This is a guy who hasn't started a game for Dortmund in 2 or 3 months maybe? I mean, don't get me wrong, he comes on, he's a good sub and he's still a great young player, but he was very notably replaced by Sebastian Haller after the turn of the year once Haller came back. And I don't know. I think Jude Bellingham could provide a lot more goals. We saw him have some chances in this game. He missed with that kind of one shot in particular, but the whole front line for me just really isn't kind of carrying its weight. We talk a lot about how Bayern miss a striker, but I think Dortmund have really lacked the kind of talisman in this game. Not in this game, sorry, but just in the league in general. And relying on like the Brandts and Moukokos and even Malin to an extent to kind of drag Dortmund through matches like this, I think really shows the kind of vulnerabilities in this team and the frailty of this team. And I don't know, I feel like I kind of tweeted after, I kind of did like a kind of post-match kind of roundup on Substack, on a Substack note, and I had a subscriber ask me saying, well, regardless of how they finish this season, do you think there'll be a big turnaround in players? And I said, well, I think it'll be evolution rather than revolution. And to which he then says, well, what positions do you think they need to replace? To which I then basically outlined about 7 or 8 positions that probably need some changing. I said, well, actually, now that I think about it, maybe it does need to be maybe they do have to kind of chop up this team and rebuild it from scratch. Which then makes you wonder, well, what actually is this Dortmund team right now? Is it the start of something small? or is it something small that's beginning to grow into something big? Is Terzic kind of building the kind of foundations for a squad that's going to get added to in the summer? Or despite pushing Bayern all the way this season, are Dortmund going to still have to basically sell off a number of these players, move on a number of these players, and rebuild again? And is next season going to be another transition season? Because I look at that kind of performance against Bochum, and I do kind of wonder, like, where's the kind of long-term planning here? Where's the spine of this team that's going to be here for the next 4 or 5 seasons, and who are the players that are going to be relied upon? Because it does kind of feel like from week to week, and look, to be honest, a lot of clubs are like this right now because it's been a very heavy season. We've had the World Cup, so I don't want to just kind of blame Dortmund for this, and God knows we'll dig into Bayern in a moment, but it does feel like Dortmund are just kind of going from one week to the next, kind of hoping that someone shows up and wins in the game. And it has been Daniel Malin recently, but he did his part by creating a goal in the first half, and in the second half, when they needed someone to put the ball in the back of the net, they just didn't have anyone to step up and be counted.
Yeah, there was a really good tweet by Tobias Escher von Spielverlagerung in German. I retweeted it, and he basically said, if Dortmund win the Meisterschaft, which is still very much possible, this title race is far from being over, essentially because I think everyone knows that Bayern is still going to drop points, and we'll get to them in a moment. But what he said is, like, if Dortmund win the championship, which is very much possible, a lot of people will talk about their mentality, their strength of mentality, etc., and completely overlook that this team is still fundamentally flawed. And that's true. This team is still fundamentally flawed, and they will win the title because everyone else was not strong enough to win the title either. And that's, this is true for whoever wins the title at the end of the day. We can basically take that entire statement and say that about Bayern.
Yeah. Can I also add can I throw another thing in there? Reece Edwards, who writes for Get German Football News, who is at _Reece Edwards on Twitter. He did a really good thread actually today, May 1st, on, breaking down and analysing Dortmund's performance. And he basically made a really good point of underlining how they had 64% possession, but just did not create any chances. So I definitely recommend people go find him on Twitter and have a look at that thread if you're interested.
Yeah. I mean, that brings us to the scenario of Bayern Munich do beat Hertha. And for about 65 to 70 minutes, it looked like my prediction that they would draw this game would come true, because like Dortmund, they huffed and puffed. They could not find a way to get through this Hertha block. Hertha looked actually pretty well organized while not really offering much in attack. Yeah, there was a few times when Luke Bakio did get forward, but it never felt like that Hertha would do something. Essentially, a moment of magic by Kimmich and Gnabry win this game. Coman then scores the second. But, Kimmich and Gnabry did what Dortmund didn't do against Bochum, and that was essentially one pass, one contact, goal, right? They used that one moment when Hertha's defense was asleep to score what turned out to be the winner. That's great for Bayern. They're back on top. I think everyone here is cautioned by the fact that this is Hertha, who, with another 20 minutes of this, could have gotten a point there, and I think in the end of the day, if this match ends 0-0, I don't think many people would have been surprised, right? And that is, I think, where Dortmund fans can be really optimistic in the run-in. And it also gets us to the point that if Bayern drop points one more time, we'll have the worst Bundesliga champion since the 2010-2011 season in terms of points total, which is just remarkable. And I think completely underlines all the things that we just said about Dortmund, which are also true about Bayern Munich, that this is literally a snail's race to the title. In fact, Union Berlin, if they had won their game against Leverkusen, would be within 3 points of first, which is also insane. No one wants to win this title, it looks like, including Bayern Munich.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of tweeted that on Sunday, I think it was, saying 3 reasons why I want Union Berlin to win the title. And one of the points was that because Bayern and Dortmund don't deserve to win it. And that is kind of the conclusion I'm coming to this season, largely based on the fact that you can look at both teams and say, well, regardless whoever wins it, they're going to have to spend the summer doing a lot of work to rebuild either team or both teams to make them match fit and fighting fit for the next season. But yeah, I mean, I think it goes some way to kind of showing just how much Dortmund or how much Bayern really have kind of fallen from grace, in the sense that what was a pretty routine 2-0 win over Hertha Berlin was kind of seen as like a relief, to finally pick up 3 points. And I think I tweeted at halftime that Bayern really did bombard that Hertha goal. Hertha did a great job of defending at points, and I thought they didn't look entirely uncomfortable for most of the Bayern pressure. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, we were talking about this at halftime, and I was or during the game, and I was like, no, Bayern are going to win this. Like, there's no way they don't beat this Hertha team. I mean, it really would have been quite something. But, before the game, when we saw Choupo-Moting was out, I think it's going to be ruled out on Saturday. But that was a big deal because, they huffed and puffed in that first half. And my conclusion was at halftime that Bayern are kind of going through the motions, but they just don't have anyone to kind of put the ball in the back of the net. And thought it was quite telling that the way Serge Gnabry finally scored that goal was through a header, which finally got into that kind of role of a kind of striker, finally into that role as a number 9 and finished like a number 9, and suddenly Bayern get that breakthrough. But I do kind of want to spend a moment on Joshua Kimmich here, because for the last 2 or 3 weeks, maybe longer, we've been kind of slowly but surely underlining the performances that him and Goretzka have been putting in. And while I don't think either of them have really had stinkers recently, I don't think either player would really make an argument would be willing to make the argument that they've had classic seasons. And I know Kimmich isn't really renowned as a kind of playmaker, but I thought it was quite telling that he's got 2 assists in this game, and they were actually his first assist in the league since February, I think. And when you do kind of partner that up with Leon Goretzka, who really should be a kind of box-to-box player who picks up about 10 or 15 goals and assists every season, it feels like while Bayern's glaring fault in this team is they don't have a striker, there are kind of issues across the pitch, and in the middle of the park, both Kimmich and Goretzka have kind of been below par. Kimmich looked back to his best somewhat in this game, but another interesting thing I thought was also Goretzka after the game basically came out and said, the players have had to put up with a lot of criticism this season, and I don't think it's fair, which I actually think I've noticed a lot of Bayern fans took quite a lot of exception to that, because the players haven't been good, and you can blame Nagelsmann or you can now blame Tuchel, but at the end of the day, like, if you keep changing the manager and nothing changes, then it's obviously the players. And I don't know, maybe that was just frustration on his part, because I think he probably knows in his own heart that he hasn't had a great season. But I don't know, I thought it was quite telling that once one of them finally stepped up and looked like their old self, they were able to win this game, and I think that's maybe something that's been missing this season.
Yeah, I think Kimmich's magic foot, right? Zauberfuß was the headline in the Süddeutsche Zeitung decides this game, and that is something that has been missing. The chip ball that he's so capable of playing into the box, right? And it was a magnificent moment. Like, that pass was a spot point delivery, and does make the difference in this game. Now, I don't think that Bayern Munich are out of the woods at all. In fact, their run-in is quite difficult. They still got Werder, they got Schalke, they got Leipzig, and then Köln, right? And I think that 3 of those 4 teams are potential stumbling blocks. And I know we have a lot of Köln listeners. It's not Köln. I think Schalke is probably, people will look at Werder and Schalke and say, okay, well, they're not really that difficult. But Schalke in particular could be a team here that might say, hey, we need points here for survival. This is not like, oh, nice to have. Like, this is like, when you look at the relegation race, they are actually in a situation where they probably need at least a point against Bayern Munich to have a chance of staying in the league. And I think they're actually capable of doing it, right? This is the other thing. They are the team that could probably hurt them. Now, I don't know what's going on with Werder Bremen and Niklas Füllkrug, but I do think if Niklas Füllkrug is back, then that is a goal for Bremen right there, right? So, and the amount of goals that Bayern have been scoring lately, that might be enough to get a point. So, I think there is a run in there where Bayern Munich they have work to do. to actually win this title. It is not a given that they win all 4 games. I guess the bigger question then is, can Dortmund win all of their 4 games? Having 3 home games is massive versus 2, right? But at the end of the day, I think, this is still very much open on this Bayern team, despite the expected win against Hertha. I think they're not quite over the hump yet.
Walmart's Black and Unlimited platform is making it easier than ever to support Black-owned brands. When you go to walmart.com/Black and Unlimited, you'll not only get to shop products from Black-owned brands, but also learn about founders like Janelle Stevens of Camille Rose, which specializes in products for naturally curly hair. And there are many more awesome products that you have yet to discover. It's all easy to find with Walmart's Black and Unlimited platform. Join in on celebrating Black brands today and every day at Walmart. We are Black and Unlimited. Visit walmart.com/Black and Unlimited to discover more. That's walmart.com/Black and Unlimited.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I mean, like I said, it was just a routine 2-0 win over Hertha. This was probably the easiest fixture that Bayern could have had this weekend. With all the respect to Hertha Berlin, I'm not trying to kind of rain on their parade. Well, not that they're having a parade, I guess, but kick the miler down is probably the best idiom I could use for that. But yeah, I don't know. I felt like this felt like a bit of a leg up for Bayern, and they will have tougher tests to come. I think it'd be really interesting to see how Tuchel kind of takes the next couple of games, because obviously the kind of main thing was the fact that Upamecano was missing from this game with an injury. So Pavard comes into mid defence alongside De Ligt, with Mazraoui and then Cancelo, and I thought that actually worked quite well, to be honest with you. So it'll be interesting. And then obviously you got issues with Sadio Mane up front, which didn't quite work out. I don't know. This Bayern team really just feels like it's almost like a pre-season tour where like they're playing different players every week. Some are working, some aren't. Tuchel's still trying to kind of figure out what players he can rely on, but he's having to do this all in the trickiest of situations. And I guess to kind of bring it back to like this kind of, I don't want to call it an underwhelming title race, because I'm still really enjoying it and it's very entertaining and it gives us stuff to talk about. I really hope people listen to this, we're enjoying the show as well and enjoying the season. But it's such a benefit to Bayern that they can rely on Dortmund dropping points in just about every away game that they seem to be playing right now. Now, Dortmund only have one more away game coming up, so they've got 3 home games and then 1 away game. I can't actually remember who that
Augsburg.
away game against, but I don't remember it. Yeah, I'd say it doesn't seem like a difficult one, but obviously Augsburg picked up a point this weekend, so you never really know. But it'll be really interesting to see how Bayern do kind of get on going forward. And I mean, I guess Choupo-Moting coming back at some point make a big difference, because they desperately missed him. But so just one more thing, actually, maybe it just kind of popped into my head here. Serge Gnabry gets his goal, playing almost like a kind of number 9. And I do think it's really interesting to see what happens for him in between now and the end of the season as well, because he, I think, more than just about any forward player in this team, perhaps even more so than Sadio Mane, has a lot of question marks over his future, I think, because while Leroy Sané seems to kind of be a kind of ingrained kind of star player in this team, at least in terms of like as a leader, or maybe not a leader, but as a kind of a senior member of the squad in terms of his pay pack. Kingsley Coman has a very clear role in this team because he's the right winger, or he can sometimes play on the left, but he's a winger through and through, and he'll do what he's asked to do as a winger. If you don't have a number 9 in the box, that's not his problem. He's going to do what a winger's supposed to do, and it's up to the club to find another player to fit in there. And Sadio Mane is a player who I think has a lot of talent. He's got a lot of pedigree, and I'd be really intrigued to see if Tuchel actually maybe can kind of rebuild something there between now and the summer. But he is undoubtedly kind of a player who would play up front if the club's stuck with him. Serge Gnabry just kind of seems to float in between all these roles. He was kind of started as almost like a number 10 in this game, but with Musiala in the squad, they kind of played over one another. And I don't know, I just wonder where Serge Gnabry kind of fits into this team going forward, or if at all. And, when the season finishes up, and regardless of whether Bayern finished first or second, you're going to have Oliver Kahn, Salihamidzic, Thomas Tuchel, whoever else, with a whiteboard and a list of names on one side of the board, and, a list of positions, like we have on Transfermarkt, where you can kind of rank the squad by positions. And Serge Gnabry doesn't really nail down any of those positions. He just kind of floats between them all. And I do wonder if, when Bayern are looking at what's going wrong with the squad, players like that may be the first ones to go, in the sense that they don't really hold a specific role in the team, except sometimes playing up front and sometimes scoring the odd goal.
Yeah, Serge Gnabry's future, I think, is going to be really interesting. Because, like, as you said, like, he doesn't really fit that number 9 role. I mean, we discussed Bayern Munich's future number 9, I think, in great length on this show, on various shows. So it's going to be interesting to see what his future holds and whether he's going to still be at the club. I mean, you mentioned Oliver Kahn, Hasan Salihamidzic. We're not sure if they're still at the club when the dust settles. Oliver Kahn, I was kind of shocked by this when I saw the video. He looked like he's aged 10 years since I've seen it last in February, which tells you the pressure that he's under, I think, at the club at the moment. I actually was really shocked by it. You know, like how there's these photos of Barack Obama after his first year in office as a president, and how aged he looked after that first year. I was shocked how aged Oliver Kahn looked. And I think it tells you quite a bit of how much is going on behind closed doors.
Yeah, can I also just make a final point before we move on to our game? And this is such a stupid thing to pick up on in a football match, but because it's Bayern Munich, it's probably quite necessary. We always talk about how, like, at least over the last 4 or 5 weeks, every time a team scores against Bayern Munich, the camera cuts to Salihamidzic and Oliver Kahn sit next to each other, one of them with his head in his hands, the other one kind of looking dismayed. This week for this game, I thought was quite telling is that Kahn and Salihamidzic weren't sitting next to each other at all. In fact, I'm not even sure if they had Salihamidzic in the crowd. Maybe he did, but Kahn was sitting on his own.
Yeah.
Right, so Heiner and Salihamidzic are sitting together. Kahn is sitting on his own, but who did the camera cut to time and time again? Uli Hoeneß and Rummenigge, both sitting beside each other, and they were kind of sitting almost in the exact same spot that Salihamidzic and Kahn usually sit in. And it's almost like subconsciously the kind of cameramen at the Bundesliga were just kind of cutting to these two old kind of guys who used to do the job, rather than Salihamidzic and Kahn, who had quite literally been pushed to the sides in the stand. And I thought that's just so interesting, like psychologically, the fact that these two guys have been sitting next to each other. Now they're not sitting next to each other, and the old guard have been placed front and centre. But I'm sure Bayern do these things on purpose. I'm absolutely certain of it. But it says a lot about how things are going on at the club behind.
Well, that's what I said like last week. It's like Kremlinology, right? Where like the Soviet leaders were placed in certain positions so the West could figure out where their hierarchy status is. And I think that's what's going on at Bayern Munich. So I guess this is Selbener Straße-lology, where we try to figure out on where they're sitting in the stand, on what their current status in the hierarchy is. Based on that, it's not looking good for Oliver Kahn. But we have, I think there's lots more to discuss about this later this week when we have more information. I do want to stay with Hertha, but transition it to the relegation race because, and can be brief, I think Hertha now 6 points to 16th and 15th, right? Bochum and Stuttgart both on 28 points, Hertha on 22, with 4 games left. Bearing in mind a miracle, Hertha are probably relegated. I think we can probably say that. I can't see them making up 6 points in 4 games.
No, nor can I. And we did kind of talk about this at length, actually, I think last week. I can't remember if it was on one of the bonus shows or the main show, but I did kind of wonder whether the appointment of Pal Dardai was with one eye on going down and having a kind of steady hand. Maybe not. I mean, he might just kind of go back to his normal role in the summer once they find someone else to take his job. But yeah, that kind of new manager bounce just has not happened for Hertha. And it probably makes things... It couldn't have been a better time because we I watched the Schalke game in particular as well, and that turnaround against Werder Bremen was quite something, and it really makes for a really interesting kind of final kind of few weeks in that point of the table, because you've now got Schalke on 27, Bochum on 28, Stuttgart on 28, Hoffenheim on 29, and then I guess Augsburg on 31, who might get dragged.
I think that's the cutoff. I think Werder on 35 are probably okay. I think the cutoff is 13th. But also I think 18th is settled now too. It's really between 17th and 13th. Those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams are going to figure out the rest of the relegation race. And all those teams, Schalke and Augsburg still have matches against the title holders, so that's something to keep in mind as well. Title favorites, let's word it that way. But we mentioned Bochum already. Their point against Dortmund is in this context is huge, right? Schalke with a huge win over Werder Bremen, and that was a very late turnaround as well. Which, in the context of, I think if they had dropped 2 points or all 3 here, they'd be in a similar situation in Hertha. But because they won this game, the relegation battle now looks extremely interesting. And of course, Schalke is still playing Bayern. So I think we're actually in a really interesting situation now where the relegation race, we don't know who's going to occupy 17th and 16th at the end of the season.
Yeah, I actually think Schalke do a really good job of kind of like summing up how crazy this relegation race has been this season, because you look at that kind of match against Werder Bremen. Now, Bremen obviously score early on with a great goal through Dux, and I thought it was really interesting. It was Mitchell Weiser that created the goal. It was a really, really silky assist, and you kind of think at that point, well, Werder Bremen are a mid-table team. Arguably, they've got an early goal. They really should see this out. But Schalke just kept going and going and going. Now, maybe it would have been a different story if Füllkrug was playing, who was obviously missing from this game. But Schalke just kept going, and not only did they manage to turn around and get a late equaliser in the 81st minute, but then Drexler scores with basically the last touch of the game. Right after, I think it was Dux actually almost made it 2-1 for Werder Bremen. It was kind of like a heroic sliding tackle. I can't remember from which Schalke defender. And the interesting thing from this is, obviously, Schalke then pick up 3 points, which, if you kind of look at the way the league table end up playing out this weekend, it's huge for them, because if they lose that game, they're sitting on 24 points, and all of a sudden, it looks like you've got your bottom 2 right there. But for people who haven't been following the Bundesliga this season, it's really worth pointing out how hard Schalke have worked to try and get out of this bottom 3. To the extent that I actually went back and looked, and since Thomas Reis was appointed last October, Schalke have been the 10th best team in the division, and yet they're still sitting here second bottom. And I think that's also due to the fact that the teams around them just continue to pick up points. If you kind of look at the 3 teams above Hertha Berlin right now, you've got Schalke, who've picked up 2 wins in the last 3. You've got Bochum, who've picked up 3 draws in the last 5 games. You've got Stuttgart, who've won 2 and drawn 2 of the last 5. And you can even go above that to Hoffenheim, who've had a kind of quick turnaround as well, with 2 wins and a draw in their last 5 games under Materazzo. So even Augsburg, who are above them. Yeah. So we talked about this in the bonus show at length with Chris Williams, so I'd definitely recommend anyone who hasn't listened to that to go have a listen as to why this bottom half of the table is so tight this season. But I think this is why I find myself getting more and more invested in Schalke as the season comes to a conclusion, because unlike other teams who we've had in the Bundesliga recently who just kind of made up the numbers or really haven't put in the effort, of course put in the effort, but they just don't have the quality to try and challenge week in, week out. Schalke really have been grinding away since Thomas Reis came in, and they're still within touching distance of safety. I mean, this could go down to the final day. And I think they've done a really good job of kind of emphasising how tight the bottom of the table is.
It's been fascinating to watch. I mean, we've been really blessed this season with so many different races going on. The relegation race is just as fascinating as the title race, in many ways more fascinating, because there's so many teams involved, right? And big name teams involved. And I made this point on in our WhatsApp group that with Darmstadt and Heidenheim likely now coming up, and Hertha already going down. And this might sound harsh. We need a smaller team to get relegated from the Bundesliga to sort of make up the numbers. Now, it's all based on merit. We don't want to say, okay, Heidenheim and Darmstadt don't deserve it. But it's not like that they're going to bring big crowds and big stadiums to the Bundesliga, right? And both those teams will probably struggle next year, in fairness. So, that will get us to a situation where the table will not be as balanced as it is this year. So it'd be good for someone, if Hertha do go down, which seems likely, that, maybe Stuttgart or Schalke can stay in this league, or maybe ideally both. Now, again, it's all based on merit, but for the Bundesliga, and I think for the people that are trying to sell the Bundesliga, not just domestically, but also abroad, that is probably a pretty good scenario. Now, we don't know if that's going to happen because, all these teams are picking up points here and there. Stuttgart are a massive club, Schalke are a massive club. Even Bochum, we always say tiny Bochum, but this is a team with a big history that bring lots of traveling support. When they have that fan friendship with Bayern Munich, and, they always bring tens of thousands of fans to Munich. They have, if Schalke stay in, then you have the war derbies with Schalke and Dortmund. Those are really big fixtures on the calendar, right? So you can't even say that they are a tiny club because, yes, they're not big, but they do bring a lot of eyeballs to the league, at least domestically. So it's really tricky looking at this and saying, okay, who's going to make up the numbers? HSV, traditionally, messing it up again, right? They're like the Dortmund of the second division. So it's a tricky one, right? Again, based on merit, Heidenheim and Darmstadt, on what they've done in the second division, they deserve this. But if you're trying to sell the Bundesliga, you really wonder, what is the ideal scenario here?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, God only knows really who's going to end up getting promoted or relegated in this situation, and this is the tricky thing. At this point in the season, you usually can say, well, one of these two teams have really nosedived and they're going to struggle to kind of turn it around before the end of the season. But in no way can you say Schalke, Bochum, Stuttgart, Hoffenheim, you could rule any of those teams out, because they all do have not only do they have the talent, but they've all got teams who are really right behind their managers and doing what they can do to win games, or to really, not even just win games, but claw points off teams, as we saw from Bochum against Dortmund. Part of me kind of thinks maybe Augsburg might get dragged into this and kind of end up in 17th place with a team like Schalke or Bochum maybe in that kind of relegation playoff spot. And at that point, you would kind of... Yeah, I know. At this point, you would kind of... I guess at that point, you would kind of back Bochum or Schalke to kind of stay up at that rate. But... I don't know. I mean, I think again, I really think that was such a huge result for Schalke, because they'll be looking at that league table right now thinking, as long as we're within 1 point of 16th and 15th place going into that final game of the season, then really just about anything can happen, So it'll be really interesting to see what happens. But I'm so glad it's like this. I mean, those clubs will hate it, but I'm so glad we've got this. It's kind of ticking on to the final match day of the season as things stand. And we have plenty to... I
also just don't know if HSV is going to beat Stuttgart, Bochum or Schalke. I just can't see it, because these teams have been clawing and fighting in this relegation battle. And you look at HSV and their issues with mentality and staying power. You can't really see them beating any of these teams, just because these teams have been in such a battle in the first division, right? For them facing HSV, a team that just can't get the job done, you just know that they have a better mentality to just basically say, okay, we're going to beat HSV and stay in the Bundesliga. That would be kind of my takeaway. That's a relegation race. Stefan, the race for Europe is equally interesting. That includes the Champions League, where, Union are probably kind of walking away with, I guess it is 54 to 56. So Union on 56, Freiburg on 56. Then there's Leipzig on 54. We can probably say Leverkusen are, I would say 8 points is probably too much in 4 games to reach 4th place. I reckon Leverkusen will focus on the Europa League, trying to reach the Champions League that way. the Champions League race is very interesting. But then you also have Wolfsburg slowly but surely climbing up the table. We have the German Cup semifinals this week, right? Stuttgart against Freiburg on Tuesday. And then, Freiburg against Leipzig on Wednesday. Stuttgart against Frankfurt on Tuesday. I was getting ahead here because we were talking about a potential Baden-Württemberg derby in the final. But Leipzig, Freiburg, if one of those two teams win the DFB Pokal, which is not unlikely, that spot would go back to the Bundesliga, which means 7th place would be enough for the Conference League playoffs, right? And that's where Wolfsburg are in right now. And they're kind of duking it out with Leverkusen. Of course, if Leverkusen win the Europa League, then we have to open up the math completely again, because that would change everything too. But, Wolfsburg have looked really good. And with everything that's going on, and the way that they've kind of run up the table, there is a good chance that they will be in Europe next year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they picked up a really surprising one over Mainz the weekend there. Surprising for two ways. Wolfsburg haven't traditionally been great at home this season, while Mainz have been great away from home. So to pick up that kind of result and to do so in quite an efficient manner. I know Mainz had their chances, don't get me wrong, but to do that is really quite impressive. And if you kind of look at the last 5 match days, Wolfsburg have kind of been beginning to pick up some steam. And the really interesting thing here is if you kind of look at the run-in for those, let's say Union Berlin, Freiburg, Leipzig, I'll put Leverkusen to one side, and then Wolfsburg, you kind of look at the games they have left to play, and you kind of wonder whether Wolfsburg might be able to kind of sneak into kind of like, maybe like 6th place or 5th place. I mean, obviously not going to get into 5th place, but they've got a decent run in the sense they got Dortmund away, which they're probably not going to win, but then they play Hoffenheim, Freiburg, and then Hertha, and that's probably 2 games that they probably can win. The interesting thing is, if you kind of look at Freiburg and Leipzig's upcoming fixtures, there's a really good chance that they could drop a lot of points. Now, obviously, Freiburg play Leipzig in the Pokal this week, which just for anyone, we'll probably talk this at the end of the show, but we're also doing like a reaction show to these games for our subscribers. So subscribe if you kind of want some Pokal coverage this week. They then play Freiburg away right afterwards. They then play Werder Bremen at home, a tough game. Bayern Munich away, and then they have Schalke in the final match day of the weekend of the season, which we could have a Schalke team who are fighting for their lives there. Okay, so difficult for Leipzig. Then you have Freiburg again, doubleheader against Leipzig. Then play Union Berlin. Then they play Wolfsburg. Then they finish the season against Frankfurt. Freiburg could feasibly lose those last kind of 4 games in the league, not to mention the Pokal match. I think it really is like a coin toss between them and Leipzig right now in terms of the Pokal and the corresponding Bundesliga clash. But those clash against Union, Wolfsburg and Frankfurt were really, really difficult for them, going forward. And then Mainz, who are also kind of in the running as well, play Schalke, Frankfurt, Stuttgart and Dortmund. So there's it seems like a bit of a cliche, but there's really no easy games left at this point this season. And then you kind of turn to Leverkusen, who have Cologne, Stuttgart, Gladbach and Bochum, which is maybe the easiest of those run-ins. But then you remember that they're also in the middle of a Europa League run, and they're struggling to kind of balance both of those things we talked about. I can't remember which show it was last week, and about the way that Xabi Alonso's having to kind of bide his time with Florian Wirtz and maybe having to drop him or rest him in between Europa League games. So I think there's so much left to play for in those kind of European spots. I mean, you say that maybe Union Berlin, Freiburg and Leipzig have kind of pulled away from the likes of Leverkusen, Wolfsburg and Mainz, but there's by no means anything certain that those 3 teams will pick up 3 or 4 wins between now and the end of the season. So much to play for, and you might have a situation where, especially if one of these teams wins the Pokal that's in the top 6, you could have a team like Wolfsburg in the Conference League next season, which would be a great achievement for Niko Kovac's side.
That's the great thing. We have a season run in the next 4 weeks is full of unknowns, which, whether it's the relegation battle, whether it's the fight for European spots, whether it's the championship race, snail's race to the end. But then, in fact, we also have a team in the semifinals of the Europa League, right? For the second year in a row. So that is an intriguing storyline to follow, and we'll follow it. And then, of course, the German Cup, which provides us with a completely different story because neither Dortmund or Bayern Munich are involved. So it's been great. I mean, we might, and I've said this on the show earlier, like last week, right? That we might have 3 different German title holders, and none of them are Bayern Munich. So yeah, it remains exciting, Stefan, which is great for the show, and we have no idea how it ends. As I said, I will no longer make any predictions. I'll give up.
Well, you're going to have to on Thursday or Friday when we do the prediction show. But
yes, I'll just toss some dice and see what happens there. Might as well. It's probably just as good as me coming up with a prediction. But yeah, you mentioned it. We'll have the preview show as always. That is the only thing that is the same. We'll have a transfer show, and then of course we have the reaction show to the DFB Pokal, which is on Wednesday. So these are the programming notes for the rest of the week. As always, this show is brought to you by Bet Online, and I think that is everything, right, Stefan? Did I miss anything?
Just to let people know that we're on YouTube as well. We subscribed to we actually did a reaction YouTube video to Marco Reus's contract renewal last week. So that's why we haven't talked about it on the show here, actually, by the way, because I know it happened after the last show last week. So if you want some kind of reaction as to that and his future at Dortmund and stuff, jump on our YouTube channel. You'll find it, Gegenpressing Podcast, obviously. And even if not, just go give us a subscribe. I know most of our listeners are also on YouTube now. And it's a good way to keep up with what we do. We do more stuff aside from just on this main show. We also clip up some bits from the bonus shows and the transfer shows. So definitely go give that a follow.
Absolutely. As well. And there's more videos like that coming because it is a good way to react to news like that for us. Because we do big features on the Substack, right? And then these are more of a breakdown. So sometimes it's better to react to small news with a 5-minute video. So check that out. We'll be back later this week. Until then, auf Wiedersehen.
Kein Ende in Sicht.
Walmart's Black and Unlimited platform is making it easier than ever to support Black-owned brands. When you go to walmart.com/Black and Unlimited, you'll not only get to shop products from Black-owned brands, but also learn about founders like Janelle Stevens of Camille Rose, which specializes in products for naturally curly hair. And there are many more awesome products that you have yet to discover. It's all easy to find with Walmart's Black and Unlimited platform. Join in on celebrating Black brands today and every day at Walmart. We are Black and Unlimited. Visit walmart.com/Black and Unlimited to discover more. That's walmart.com/Black and Unlimited.